Welcome to the place of the internet where we probably don't look at our finances enough, but we should definitely look at them more. And we're gonna go over how to handle your finances at the end of the year into the beginning of the next. Because for the most part, a lot of us don't look at our finances for the rest of the year. So I wanna make it as easy as humanly possible. And we're gonna do that by looking at the past, looking at the future in 3 ways, and then finalizing the future. Now, I would really appreciate if you hit the like and subscribe button down below because it is completely free. It lets me know to do more helpful videos, more finance videos. I will actually link the playlist down below to all my different finance videos because I have a little thing for making the most of our finances and making most of the system that screws a lot of people. So, let's make our bank. But either way, I'm going to continue on and we're going to first talk about reviewing your past money allocation. And allocation meaning where did you put all of your money? Where did your money come in from too? So first, I'm going to need you to look at your income because a lot of these numbers mean nothing if you don't really know how much money you're making. Now, if you're making no money at all, this probably isn't the video for you. But as for your income, I want you to look over your forms of income and determine your average income. Now, you can do this monthly, weekly, annually, quarterly, whatever works best for you. In different fields, it's easier to do quarterly than it is to do monthly. And I also want you to use your net income, so what you make after taxes. So I can't per se tell you how much you're gonna take out in taxes. You kind of have to look at that yourself. And then I want you to look at your expenses. And now I find a lot of people when they do like finance videos, they're like, look at your, goal for your expenses. How much do you want to spend on food? How much do you want to spend at the grocery store compared to restaurants? And how much do you want to spend at Sephora? But realistically, no one is accurate with that. People are like, yeah, I spend like $100 at the grocery store. I'm like, no, the fudge you don't. Like, look at what you actually realistically spend because saying these random numbers, if they're not actually close to accurate, they mean nothing. So I find one of the easiest ways to get an idea of your expenses is first to break down your bigger must-have expenses that you kind of do know about and aren't really going to change too drastically. I would say they're fixed numbers, but they're not always fixed numbers. Like your rent might be a fixed number, but you might have utilities every month and it might be close to the same number, but it might not be exact. But these bigger expenses that are definitely going to happen, I want you to basically break all of those down. And those ones are going to be the easier ones to do because you're not really probably going to have to look too much at the past to really determine those numbers. Now, as for the rest of your other expenses, that's a little bit harder. And for me personally, I think one of the easiest ways, if you are being good and putting all of your expenses on a credit card that gives you the most points back for spending your money, which if you're not, I will link my credit card videos down below. I am like a stand for that. Like, make sure your money is making you money. Like, if you're spending money, it better make you money. But either way, that rant aside, if you have those credit cards, a lot of times you can go on the apps, the websites, and you can go to a section that will actually break down where your expenses went. It's not going to be completely accurate because sometimes, Amazon will be counted as this when it should be household, but it'll give you a rough estimate because you don't really need to go down to the dollar for this. We're looking at it in a more broad sense. So I find going on those sites is one of the easiest ways to determine where exactly your money goes. Now, if you don't put any money on credit cards, it could be a little bit harder. You might have to go in and do the math yourself. But if you have credit cards, there's probably a section for it. And if not, if you want to look at it in a larger scope, because maybe you have a lot of cards. Like I personally have a lot of credit cards. I don't want to go by credit card, determine what exactly my expenses are usually, which I really need to do because this last year I haven't been that good and I really need to be better next year. But either way, that aside, there's third-party sites that will actually collect all of your information. So your different bank accounts, your different credit cards, everything that you spend money on, you can basically link through this account and it'll determine how much you spend in these different categories, and you can add a lot of different factors depending on how you want to break it down because your expenses are probably gonna be a lot different than mine, so we're gonna break it down differently. So the site that I have personally used in the past was Mint. They end up changing and a lot of the features weren't free anymore, so I'm not sure how great it is, but you can try out Mint. I personally use Personal Capital now and I do pay for it. It's not that expensive and I find the features are worth it just because the amount of time I would do doing this by hand is not worth it, so I personally use Personal Capital, and that gives me an idea on what my expenses are. And so I'm going to sit down soon and do that too. And with all of that information, you might have a few reality checks. I know I probably will, but either way, if you do or don't, it doesn't matter. It'll give you a rough idea of of what your expenses are, and then you can determine what you want them to look like in the future, because that's what really matters. That's what the whole point of looking at our finances at the end of the year into the beginning of the next are. We're trying to go into the beginning of this next year better than we potentially did last year, or at least keeping up to the bare minimum we were doing before. So before we can determine exactly what we want our expenses to look like in the future, we're gonna have to look at those three things I was talking about earlier in the video. And the first one is reviewing your subscriptions or monthly fees. Now, you might not think of all of them as subscriptions because they might not be per se subscriptions, but one of the biggest ones for people is insurance. And a lot of people have that charged monthly. You can pay for it yearly. I wouldn't always per se recommend it because a deal usually isn't that much savings compared to if you just kept the money in your account. But either way, insurance. If you have not compared your insurance in a long time, that's one of the first things I want you to do. I know I personally need to do it because even though I'm like, oh, I have like the cheapest plan possible, like I have the best deal, all the coverage I need, you might not if you haven't looked at it in a couple years because, you know, things change. So quickly, just go in there and research and get a quote from a few different places and see if what you are paying for car insurance is realistic or if you can get a lot better of a deal for the same coverage. Now, as for other subscriptions like TV, amusement parks, gyms, but either way, I want you to look at all of them and check which ones you have. Because a lot of people aren't aware they're still paying for an old subscription, which I wonder if I kind of have one in there because I'm always like, who would forget about a subscription? But if it's only charging you like $3 a month, you might not per se notice it or remember it and you're not using it anymore. So I want you to look at all of them, and most likely if you're using one of those third-party sites or if you're going through and checking your expenses on your credit cards or doing it by hand, you're gonna see all these subscriptions come up because it's gonna be a regular charge monthly or potentially yearly, but most people, again, it's gonna be monthly. So I wanna check which ones you have and then eliminate ones you really don't need. Because if you are only watching Hulu once a month, I am sorry, you do not need a Hulu account, okay? So take away all the ones you don't need, potentially get in with friends and decide that you guys want to pay for it together and split the fee. Or if you have multiple TV services and you can bundle them together, then bundle them. You know, just make it as easy as possible so you have as little monthly expenses as you can for still having the lifestyle you want. Now, the one problem I see with sometimes other finance videos or other people talking about finances is not considering people's individual lifestyle expectations and lifestyle wants. And yes, plenty of people are living outside of their means. We probably all need to budget better. But at the same time, if you are budgeting in a manner that you're not going to live within that, like it's just not going to happen, then there's no point in doing it. There's no point in saying spend as little money as possible because then you're more likely to blow it all in a night or blow it all in a month because you're like, I've been so good, let me just go buy this car. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. So I want you to be more realistic on the type of lifestyle you want. And when you're determining all these numbers from the past and into the future, be realistic on the life you want. I want you to live the life that makes you happy as much as possible because again, we all got budgets, we all got that income we talked about that's not the same for everybody, you know what I mean? We all are limited to the income that comes in and the income we're getting in the future. But that all aside, the next thing I want you to do is review your more variable expenses. Break them down into whatever categories make the most sense for you, and then I want you to see if you're surprised by how much you spend in certain categories. And do you want to bring certain areas down? Like, do you want to spend less money in that category next year? Now, the last thing I want you to review before we make some final decisions on how we're going to go into the next year and how we're going to break everything down, I want you to look at your investments. And for a lot of people, one of the biggest ones is going to be retirement. It's not happening tomorrow, I promise you. If you're watching this video, you're not retiring tomorrow, so you should be doing something for the future. So do you have a work retirement account? Do you have a personal account? If you don't have one, I want you to sign up for whichever ones are possible for you. If you can get a work retirement account where they will match something, sign up for it. I know I am bad myself. I could have signed up months ago and I haven't done it. And I really freaking need to because they match and this stuff makes a huge difference for your future. But even if you don't have the option to have a work one, get a personal one. Sign up for one. And I know that's a lot more steps if you haven't done it already. This is all determining on based on what you're doing now and what you want to do in the future. So make a side note on how much you've been investing in the past and or how much you want to invest in the future. Now, as for other investments, that can vary drastically on the person. Do you have other investments? How much money have you been investing on average? And do you want to invest more in the future, and where do you want to invest it? That's a lot of questions for you to ask for yourself. But in the more general sense, I want you to at least have some kind of investment that you are investing in regularly that isn't just a high interest savings account. Now, with all the information we collected and the deeper dive that we did, that sit down with yourself, asking yourself a lot of questions on what you did in the past, what you want to do in the future, I want you to take all of that information and do a quick little math equation with me. I want you to take your net income, and if it's the same as the past, use your past net income. If it's going to be drastically different in the future, use your new income. But either way, take your net income and minus your bigger expenses that we talked about, things like rent, car insurance, things that are going to be those larger expenses that are going to be coming in regularly. Then I want to minus your subscriptions you are keeping, and hopefully when you looked at everything, you could take a few things away. Now, your larger expenses might be things that could be possibly a subscription, so break it down however you want to, but either way, take away your bigger expenses, then take away the subscriptions you are keeping, and then take away your variable expenses, those things that are going to change more, like the grocery store, going to the mall, whatever categories you determined, minus those two, and you can do it in this sense for a lump amount. You don't have to break them down in categories for this specific math equation, just take away those variable expenses and what exactly is left. And hopefully there is some money left, because realistically, you need some money left, and we're going to determine what you're going to do with the rest of that money. Now, a lot of people end up taking away investments from that equation, but I want you to do that afterwards, because I think a lot of people can end up investing more money than they think they can if they know how much money is left and they're doing the most with that money instead of letting it just go to a checking account. Because I do not want your money going to a checking account really at all. So whatever is left, I want you to determine how much you can use for investing. How much have you done in the past? How much do you want to do in the future? There's a lot of math for you to do when you want to break that down in more detail. But either way, now you have a better idea on how much you can invest. Maybe you need to invest less, which hopefully that's not the case, but you're going to know based on how much money is left over. And then whatever is left after investments, I want that to go into a high interest savings account. Now, some people are going to need more money to go into a savings account than others, because it is determined a lot of times by if you already have a rainy day fund. If you don't have a rainy day fund already, you don't have a just in case emergency fund, then you're going to need more money to go into a high interest savings account than investing. You just have to be realistic. You need money just in case something happens. You need money that is liquid that you can use in the case of emergency, in case of a lost job, in case of this, in case of that. So basically, if you already have your rainy day fund, less money needs to go into a high interest savings account and more of it can be used for an investment because you already have that just in case fund. Now, either way, I want the money that you are saving in a high interest savings account. There is no reason why it should be sitting in a checking account. Literally none. Especially since high interest savings account, for the most part, if you're getting good ones, they don't have much to any restrictions. You're still going to be getting that high interest even if you are pulling money out of it, even if it's not staying the same amount all the time, even if it's not over a certain amount. Now, the only basic requirements I have for you when it comes to having a high interest savings account is that it's actually a high interest savings account. It's not a checking account. It's not an I bond. It's not one with restrictions. It's just a high interest savings account that you can pull money out of. And ideally, you'll also have a checking account with them. So if you need things coming out of your checking account, you can easily transfer money over whenever you need to. And then it can, for the most part, sit in that high interest savings account and make the most amount of money per month. Now, when it comes to interest rates, as of right now, you should be having an account that gives you at least 3% interest, not 0.3, 3% interest rate. Interest rates are up a lot right now, and the bare minimum I want you to have is 3%. If you need some referrals, I will link down referrals for different credit cards with great sign-up bonuses and the bank account I have right now that's high interest. And I might even be switching my money to another account that has even higher interest rate right now, because that interest rate makes a huge difference. That's gonna be the money that you're gonna be making on your money. If you let your money sit there, they're gonna pay you every month to let your money sit there. So do it, make sure you're getting a high interest, and make sure it is, as of right now, over 3%. In the past, we have not gotten that amount of interest rate in a long time. It's usually point something, but as of right now, make sure you're at 3% or higher. And if you're not, sign up for a new one, do research, get a better high interest savings account, and pay attention to it. Now, as for your checking account, I really want barely anything to go into it. Now, some expenses do need to come out of a checking account from an actual bank card. So things like my car insurance is one thing that can't go from a savings account and can't go from a credit card. So it has to come out of my checking account. So I do make sure enough stays in there for those monthly payments, but they're only like under $100 a month. So I know to keep that amount in the account every single month. And also, if you know bigger expenses are going to be coming out of your checking account, if you have the same checking account as you do a high interest savings account, you can move money over instantly, literally instantly, without problems for most bank accounts. So I want the bare minimum to stay in there because for the most part, you're not going to be making that much money having stuff sitting in your checking account. So have your bare minimum just in case you need to charge something to there. So I personally keep $500 in there. I don't know why I keep $500. It's a random amount that sounds good to me where I'm like, if I had this charge come out, this charge come out, this charge come out, I'm good. But you have to determine that number for yourself. It might be drastically lower. It might be drastically higher. You have to base that on yourself. But either way, that was a lot of hypothetical questions I had you ask for yourself. A lot of math that I couldn't do without knowing your numbers. But hopefully this gives you a rough idea on what you should do at the end of the year into the beginning of the next, because this is what I plan on doing. There's a lot of questions I plan on asking myself, a lot of math I plan on doing. Maybe someday I will break it down with you and tell you guys all the math on that, but I need to sit down with myself and at least do it, and hopefully you'll do it for yourself too. But if you need more information on certain topics, certain points that we talked about in the videos, I will link my finance playlist down below where I talk about a lot of different topics, because this video as it is was very long and went into too much detail and wasn't broad enough. But I know there's plenty of things you need more information on, so feel free to check out those other videos and hit that like and subscribe button down below, because I do a new video every single Wednesday helping you figure out adulting. Well, again, I'm having to figure it out myself. And in addition to that, I plan on doing videos in the future diving more into these different topics. Like I plan on doing a video soon on the best bank accounts in 2023, the best credit cards in 2023. So hopefully your money can make you more money in the future with a little bit of help. And I hope you have a great rest of your morning, evening, night, whatever it is for you. I'll see you Wednesday.